This is the Jillian Grace Show, Vibrational Architect. I teach the discipline of redesigning the internal patterns that shape your love, your relationships, and the life you quietly know you were meant to live. Whether you're moving through familiar emotional cycles or you're a high achiever who senses there's more available to you, you're in the right place. This is where people learn to master the architecture of their lives and release the patterns holding them back from their inner blueprint. Each episode ends with a guided transmission to anchor the vibration we're working with so you can fully step into becoming the architect of your own life. Join me, Jillian Grace, as we pull back the layers and rebuild the vibration you were always meant to live from. Hello, welcome back to the Jillian Grace Show. I'm so glad you're here, and whether you're on a walk, in your car, or lying in bed with one earbud in, I see you. And I want you to know you didn't stumble upon this episode by accident. You were drawn here, and that is going to make a lot more sense by the time we're done. So today we're going somewhere that sits right between the intersection of neuroscience and the mystical. And that place is your imagination. Not daydreaming, not wishful thinking. I'm talking about imagination as a literal perceptual faculty, a technology of your consciousness that reaches beyond the visible dimension into something far more real than what the physical eye can see. We're going to move through the science, the metaphysical framework, and an intuitive activation with 4 integration practices that you can use this week to start bringing that frequency to life. Before we get started, I want this quote to sit with you for a moment. You're not building from nothing. You are remembering what has always been true. Okay, let's go. First, let's start with the science of where thoughts actually come from. Let's start with the brain, because before we go metaphysical, we need to look at something beautiful about what's actually happening when you close your eyes and dream. Here's a question that most people never really sat with. Where do thoughts come from? Not philosophically, literally. If you have a thought, you didn't choose it, it arrived. And neuroscience has started to get very interested about exactly where those thoughts arrive from. So first, you have a default mode network, your imagination network. When your brain is not actively focused on a task, a particular network spontaneously switches on. Scientists call this the default mode network, or the DMN. For a long time, researchers weren't sure what it was doing. It wasn't solving anything, it was just humming. And then they realized it activates when you daydream, when you imagine the future, when you replay memories, introspection, when you reach into the invisible and construct possibility. It comes from there. Some researchers now call that the imagination network because what your brain naturally returns to when nothing else demands its attention is imagining. Your brain's natural default state is imagination. I want you to let that land for a second. That is your natural state. Your brain is not a camera. It's a prediction engine. Most of us were taught that the brain is like a camera, passively recording the world as it is. But neuroscientists now understand the brain is a prediction engine. It constantly generates models based on reality, prior patterns, and exception, and then it filters incoming sensory data through that model. The reality you perceive is not the objective world. It's your brain's best guess, shaped entirely by what it already believes to be true. Which means shifting those internal patterns isn't just self-help. It's literally reprogramming the world you perceive. Neuroplasticity. Imagination is experience. Studies now show that when a person imagines performing a physical skill in vivid, sensory-rich detail, the brain fires nearly identical neutral patterns as when they're actually performing it in reality. In one famous basketball study, players who mentally rehearsed free throws, zero physical practice, improved at rates comparable to those who practiced physically. From the brain's perspective, they weren't just practicing, they were experiencing. When you vividly imagine the life you want, in full body, emotionally engaged present tense, you are building neural architecture. You are training your brain to recognize and move towards what you're imagining as though it's already real, because to your nervous system, it is. The quantum consciousness bridge. Is the brain a receiver? What if the brain doesn't produce consciousness, but receives it? What if your mind is less like a generator and more like a radio, and the signals coming in are coming from somewhere else entirely? Karl Pribram, a neuroscientist and Stanford professor, spent decades on what he called a hieroglyphic brain theory, the idea that the brain encodes and decodes information from a field that exists beyond the individual brain itself. Ervin Laszlo extended this with his Akashic field theory, proposing a fundamental information field underlying all of reality, one that consciousness is not fully separate from, but constantly interfacing with. So if the brain is a receiver, then when you have a vision that feels almost too real to be self-generated, you're not making it up. You're tuning in. Imagination, in that case, is not a lesser form of perception. It's actually the highest form. And that's what we're going to go into next. So now the fun part. We're going to step into the metaphysical framework and look at imagination as an interdimensional perception piece. This is the part I've been building to. The framework that lives at the very core of what it means to be a vibrational architect sits here. What dimensions actually are. When people hear dimensions, they picture portals, they picture parallel universes, somewhere else you travel to. But in metaphysics, dimensions are not locations, they're frequencies of consciousness. Think about a radio. Let's say jazz is at 91.7 and classical is at the station 104.5. They're not in different physical places. They're both present right where you're sitting, but they're separated by frequency. The 3D physical world is one bandwidth your body's senses are calibrating to receive, but it's not the only one broadcasting, and you are not the only physical receiver. You are a multidimensional being, and one of the ways that you access these frequencies is through your imagination. So your imagination is like your 5D antenna. So what we call 5D, fifth dimensional consciousness, is a frequency of love, unity, infinite possibility. I'm sure you've heard of this. It's not ahead of you. It's available to you right now. You don't access it by going somewhere else. You access it by raising your frequency to meet it. When you imagine something with your whole body and your entire body is engaged, that feeling and that sense of aliveness in your chest is not generating a fantasy. You're tuning your consciousness into a higher bandwidth where that reality already exists as a pure potential. The vision was not created by your imagination. It was simply perceived by it because you were on the right dial. Quantum physics tells us that every potential outcome exists simultaneously in superposition until consciousness interacts with it and collapses it into an experience. You're not wishing for a reality. You're selecting one with every choice, every day. The Akashic field. Then there's this section called the Akashic field, which is considered the library of all that is. Those visions that keep coming back, the ones that feel too big, too persistent, too random, they have a home. They exist in what Ervin Laszlo called the Akashic field, the fundamental information field underlying all of reality, carrying the imprint of everything that's ever been or everything that ever could be. I'm sure that many of you who have worked in the field of understanding a lot of this energy have heard about that Akashic record field. It has been labeled as something that is very woo-woo or mystical for a long time, but there actually was a lot of science and evidence around it and studies towards it. And really what that Akashic field is just the vibration of where everything exists. The name Akashic field now brings up a lot of people who feel like it's been misused or it's been overused in the metaphysical world. And I agree with that. But it's worth noting that the original usage of that term was actually based in a lot of scientific theory and understanding. And really, all that field is And all they're saying is that's the field of energy frequency that you can tap into that leads to the infinite potentials. Every vision you've ever had lies in this field, not as wishful chemistry, but as a real frequency, a real architecture of possibility, already assembled and waiting for you to close that gap. Your imagination is the bridge. Neville Goddard is a mystical teacher of the 20th century. He taught something radical in its simplicity. Consciousness is the only reality, and imagination is God. His core practice was living in the end, not imagining the outcome as a wish from the outside, but bringing it inside, living it and bringing it to life, feeling what it feels like to already have it, being the version of you who was already experiencing it, perceiving from inside the reality rather than gazing through a glass to see it. The version of reality you imagine from, not just about, is the one that collapses into your physical presence. And that is the distinction that changes everything. So let me explain that a little bit deeper. The version of reality that your frequency or emotional bandwidth is on, that you choose to look at the reality around you through the lens of, becomes the distinction that changes everything. So if you hold a perception of negativity about past experiences, then that is going to create a glass you're looking from that allows for more negative experiences and keeps you stuck in the vibration to bring that pattern towards you. But if you can switch the dial, imagine it differently, let those visuals come to life and start living from that place of peace, then you will find that the reality around you also collapses into that system. It collapses into that order, and it becomes what you then embody in how you architect your world. So there's two separate sections of this. There's fantasy and there's also interdimensional perception. And this is important because it helps you to tell the difference. Fantasy is escapism. So leaving the present and floating into a model of a movie that you never intend to make real, it feels untethered. It feels passive, sometimes a little sad underneath. Interdimensional perception feels like recognition, like landing, like a quality of knowing, some way to solidify it. Sometimes it feels like a memory, like you're returning somewhere rather than going somewhere new. And that's critical because it asks something of you. It challenges your identity. It demands you to become what you are designed to be. And that demand is how you know you're touching something real. So for instance, if you watch a movie about superheroes and then decide that you want to pretend you're a superhero, that's different. There is a dimension in which you have a fantasy realm that doesn't meet the qualifications that can be brought down to what the current reality and laws of physics in this state that you're in can possibly obtain. However, you are able to know what your body and what your soul is calling you to, because the things that you imagine in your mind will feel like you're already there. They will feel like they already make sense to you. And that's how you step into that identity of bringing that to life. And you know that you're interacting with an actual vibrational state in which exists and is present within your field. At all times, understanding that you're the vibrational architect is huge because you are not manifesting from scratch. This is the foundation of all of this. You are a vibrational architect. An architect doesn't create from nothing. It designs a blueprint. It works with what already exists to bring that specific form to life. The building exists in the blueprint before it exists in the physical world. So there is an idea, a calling, a feeling. There is a way of understanding what your blueprint is and what you're called to and why. And that's why I started doing the vibrational architect assessments, because when you have that information, it's easier to be able to understand what's calling towards you and how you can apply it and why it's calling towards you so that you can step into it. So you're not manifesting from scratch. You're architecting your vibrational home in the field. And imagining is how you draw the blueprint in. Every time you imagine your life with a specific feeling, you are filing those plans to the universe. You're declaring the structure that you are building. You are calling on the field to respond. So, what also matters so much is the body sensations. And this is one final piece. Your body is not separate from your imagination, it's an amplifier. When you feel that vision in your chest, your heart rate shifts and you sense a temperature change in that future you. That is not a metaphor, that's a signal. The Heart Math Institute research has shown that the heart generates a measurable electromagnetic field beyond the body. When you're in your heart coherence and your emotions are elevated, your imagination is engaged. You are broadcasting that frequency to the field around you. Feeling, sensation, those aren't extras. They are the architecture itself calling you towards it. Okay, I'm going to step out of teacher mode for a moment and call you into something that calls me from the center of my chest because it's something I need to say directly to whoever is listening. You didn't find this episode by accident. This version of you that pressed play today was guided here from your own consciousness to turn on a frequency that has been seeking exactly this, drawing you into this exact moment. That's not a coincidence. That's the field responding to what you've been asking for, even silently. So I want you to understand something I know that lives in the lives of so many of you. The fear that you're making it up, that whisper, what if this vision is just fantasy? What if I want something that isn't meant for me? I call this imagination the imposter syndrome. One of the most intense forms of self-abandonment is right there. It doesn't make you give up loudly. It makes you hold the dream at arm's length, talking about it, continuing that energy, that someday, that maybe, that if it were different, and it doesn't allow you to step into it. I want to give you as much assurance as I can and as much power as I can for you to understand the fact that you can see it means it already exists. You don't imagine things that aren't possible for you. Once you see them in your mind, they're already calling you. You can't tune into a radio station that doesn't exist. The fact that if you have a vision that keeps coming back, that's specific, that's persistent, that's almost embarrassingly detailed, that is the evidence of it being real. It's the frequency that you're already in, that connection with, that you're already experiencing. I'm speaking to you specifically. Anyone out there who's doubting your visions, who's talking yourself out of your own greatness, exhausted from pretending that you're okay with less. I see you, and this message is yours. You're not delusional. You're not asking for too much. You are a vibrational architect working with an incomplete blueprint, and today, I'm giving you the tools on how to complete it. So I want you to take a moment to place your hand on your heart right now and call into mind one vision, one specific, beautiful, perhaps slightly terrifying vision that you've been afraid to fully claim. Don't think about how. Don't think about whether you deserve it. Just let it come in and feel it. What you just felt, that warmth, that stirring, that ache of recognition, that's not imagination. That is the memory from a future you've already lived. The version of you that's living that reality right now just sent that feeling back to you as confirmation. It's an invitation for you to close the gap. Now it's your turn to trust it. Okay, now we are going to bring all of this into your actual life because the vibrational architect doesn't just dream, they build. There are 4 practices that are rooted in everything we've covered today, each with a neurological and energetic reason for why they work. So first, take the opportunity to do a morning frequency tune-in. The moments right after you wake up, before you check your phone, before the day rushes in, before your brain is in that state. This hypnotic window between sleep and waking is neurologically extraordinary. It's the analytical mind still being quiet. The gatekeeper is half asleep, and the imagination lands with far greater depth than any time of day. So before anything tomorrow morning, spend 5 minutes with one specific vision, not a to-do list, a vision. See it, feel it, and hear the sounds in it. Let your nervous system register it as real. You're architecting from the most potential imagination window your brain has to offer. Second, write your idea into reality. So you've got to bring it into 3 dimensions because writing is a physical act of commitment and it lands both within the body and the field. Vagueness is not a frequency. Be very specific about what you want, where you want it to be, how you want it to look. Get all of that activated and then move into how you feel. Pay attention. How does your chest feel? Do you feel grounded? Do you want to take an exhale? Be very aware of the feelings of the you in that visual. And then what you know with inner certainty is that as soon as you have both that feeling and you have that sight together, that's when you know it's done. That's when you send that activation out. That's when you are placing your vibrational message out to the universe as what you want to architect and bring in. This is the filing of the architectural plans into the universe. You're not asking, you're declaring. Submit your blueprint. The field responds to clarity. It responds to being specific, and it responds to vibrational certainty. Okay, the third practice. Instead of saying, I want this, which keeps you in the frequency of not having, practice the version that already is, even in statements per day. Not, I'm excited for when this happens. I want you to say, I am this person who trusts this vision completely. I am becoming aligned with this version of myself. I can feel the momentum. Remember, the brain is a prediction engine. So consistency over new identity begins to filter your reality through that lens. And then through that lens, you'll start to find evidence. You'll start to find priming actions that will bring up more and more trust within you. The identity shift always precedes the external shift. Always. And I talk about this in other episodes. You kind of go into like that point where you're in between state, and that's where you have to really stay calm. So we've chatted about this. Take a peek at my other episodes if you're interested in knowing more about that. That space in between and staying focused is so important. Last, this is the one where awareness becomes a very important practice, and it might be the most important of all. Your imagination is running all day, whether you're directing it or not. And many of us habitually use it against ourselves. We project the worst case scenarios, we rehearse rejection, we construct mental movies of failure. It's not just stress, it's architecture. You're building a field of fear frequencies. The imagination cleanse is simple. I want you to notice. Notice if you feel dread. Notice when you start to feel drained what you were just thinking about. Notice before the fear movie starts. And if you don't catch it before, as soon as you do notice it, pause it, breathe, redirect. Don't force it with shame. Don't be mad that that's what's happening. Gently return back to the blueprint you're choosing. Gently return back to the emotions you want. You cannot build a beautiful life from a fear frequency. But with daily intentional tuning, you become someone who builds it from love, someone who builds it from trust, and from the deep soul knowing that what you carry is real and it's coming. Okay, so I want to just take a few moments before we close, as I always do, to take a guided talk down. And we're going to do this a little bit differently today. We're just going to move through some steps to help anchor you into this state. So I want you to close your eyes. I want you to relax. And I want you to take 3 slow, deep breaths with me. Just 3. Deep, intentional, and full. Let the first one release whatever tension the day has already asked of you. Let the second one fill you with the truth of who you are, a multidimensional being with a blueprint that is already beautiful, already whole, already being answered. And let the third one be a breath of gratitude for the visions you carry, and you have the keys to see so that you can create, for the courage it takes to bring these visions to life, and for the fact that you chose today to find this podcast and to sit with a truth that changes everything. Hold your hand on your heart and just feel that. Feel yourself here. Feel the warmth beneath your palm. Feel that beating, that broadcasting. that frequency of the heart of yours, that frequency that's transmitting your visions into the universe long before language can describe what you're doing. And then last, I want you to put this into your mind to remember it. Your imagination is not a lesser faculty of what you have within. It's your highest sense, the perceptual instrument through which your consciousness releases beyond the visible world and makes contact with what's real. The visions you carry, they are not invented, they're received. They are transmissions from a future that already exists in the field that you're getting the opportunity to see. And they're waiting for you to close that gap. And you specifically, the one with the particular dreams of that beautiful specific blueprint, you're not a dreamer wishing from the outside in. You are a vibrational architect designing from the inside out. That is our time together for today. And I mean it when I say this has been one of my favorite episodes so far to sit inside of with all of you. This topic lives in me. These ideas are not things that I perform, they're things that I breathe. And getting to share them with you in this format on a random Tuesday morning or late Sunday afternoon or whenever you're listening to this right now is genuinely one of the greatest honors of my life. Keep imagining, keep building, and keep trusting the visions that won't let you go. And remember always, you are not building from nothing. You're remembering what has always truly been yours. I'll see you next time. And until then, keep your frequency high, your blueprint clear, and your hand on your heart. And go build something beautiful. Let this episode settle into your system. And if someone in your life is moving through their own patterns or stepping into their next level, send this episode to them. The vibration you're integrating becomes stronger when it's shared. And if you feel called, liking the show or leaving a review helps this work to reach people who are meant to find it. I'm Jillian Grace, and I'll meet you in the next episode as we keep rebuilding the blueprint that you were always meant to live from.